Thank you. Over to you, Reva.
Thank you, Marianne. Thanks. Well, tonight the Torah portion is Lech Lecha. In fact, this is the beginning of the Jewish nation. This whole parasha covers God saying to Abraham, go forth, leave your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to a land that I will show you. It also goes on to tell us about Abram, Sarah, and Lot go to Canaan. The famine takes over Egypt, and a whole lot of things. And it actually concludes with God establishing a covenant with Abraham. And this really is the beginning of the Jewish nation. Our religion as a faith starts later, much later, at Sinai with Moses. But tonight, all I want to share is a few words and really start right at the beginning of this parasha. When God tells Abraham, go away from your country, your relatives, your father's house, why would he do so? Because at that time, as we know, there was no belief only in one God. There was a belief in many gods, the gods of the sun, moon, earth. People worshipped things, and they made up gods who were totally in control, gods who punished the earth and people when they were angry. Abram, as he was then called, had an aha moment. Hashem, science, energy, and realized, wait, something is wrong with this. There cannot be so many people in charge of everything, the beauty I see around me. There's order. The sun comes up every morning. There has to be something that created that order. And so what he does, and this is a midrash, we don't know if it's true or not, as you probably know, his father actually made the idols that people worshipped. And the midrash says that one day his father came and found that Avram, as he was then called, as a young man, smashed all the different idols and only left the biggest one standing. And his father said, what are you doing? And he explained to his father that when he came into the room, all the smaller idols were fighting with each other, and only the biggest one remained and had power. That midrash tells us what Judaism is against. And it says, the midrash, his father said nothing. So when Avram heard that voice, he left everything he knew to go into the unknown. Now, people also have forgotten perhaps two things. One I found when I was doing my research and study in an incredible book by the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory. And I've never seen anyone say this before. You know that when Avram, A-V-R-A-M, decided to listen to that voice inside himself, to go away from what he knew, to discover the truth, to look for this one God, his name was then changed to Avraham. And what I discovered is the same happened with his wife, Sarai. I have never seen that before. Not even any feminist I know has ever mentioned that. His wife's name was Sarai. And that was changed as well. I read in this beautiful book that it was changed to Sarah, also indicating that Avraham was given a Sarah. So both of them changed. And the woman was as equal to the man. Now that is extraordinary when you think this, when was all this written and discussed in an era where women played no role at all in leadership? There, right in the beginning, we see that Sarah, her name was also changed from Sarai, and therefore Abraham was not on his own. I've never known that before, so I shared that with you. And the other extraordinary thing is that the word Lech Lecha doesn't only mean to leave everything you know, it also means to go to the unknown, but it means to leave what you have been and go to yourself, the true self, the you that is connected to one God, one humanity, and goodness. So that I thought was extraordinary, and that everyone without exception has to go through this process to really understand our potential, to really understand how we can achieve the peace we desire, how we can achieve the success we desire, but always with Hashem's path of respecting each other, of respecting differences. So I just want to share a few things on that issue with you. A complete relationship with God, goodness, a higher source of energy, however you want to turn it, is based both on an intellectual, actually understanding and questioning, and an emotional understanding. If you only, let's say, read the Bible, and to you, you look at it as knowledge, but you have no sort of feeling about it. It's just plain history. It's not enough. On the other hand, if you have an emotional connection with the Bible, and it turns you emotional, this desire to reach to goodness, or just emotional, but you don't question, you don't have knowledge, you just have emotion to be connected to a higher power, that has led to all the extremism we can see going around. It has led to hatred, to what they call demagoguery. It has led to these cults that we see today, which they say, my way is the only way, and if you're not like me, you're bad. And of course, in extreme of all religions, including Judaism, that includes killing someone physically, as our wonderful Rabin, our wonderful Prime Minister Rabin, was killed by an extreme right Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, insane, just the way today Islam, its extremities, ISIS, are killing other Muslims who don't believe. So that is sheer emotion. But there's no knowledge, there's no questioning, both of their history nor of their search for God, no matter what we call him, whether we call him Allah, we call him Hashem, we call him God, it is still the same energy, the one source that binds us all together. So I thought that's a beautiful way of interpreting Lech Lecha, is to go to yourself. And perhaps that also means that we have to leave many of the emotions, the ideas, the conditioning that we grew up with. And I'm not even talking, I mean, the fact we're Jews, it could be talking to anyone. All of us have grown up with emotions. All of us have grown up with self-defenses, protecting our territory, protecting our ideas. When we disagree with someone else, do we do it with respect? Do we lose our cool? Do we always doubt the other person's integrity? Do we doubt their motivation? Well, the Judaic way is to give people the benefit of the doubt. Let's see goodness in each other. Let's cross over those barriers of ourselves and our own conditioning. The finest example of that today, perhaps in this Abrahamic Accords. Here are two nations, two faiths, and nations, faith, Judaism and Islam. 10, 20, 30 years ago, this would have been thought impossible. And also, yes, it did happen in the Trump era. Thank God it was something good that happened in his era. But the foundation has been laid for 10, 15 years by the most wonderful rabbis and imams and priests who have been meeting privately together and saying, how can we find what we have in common and not look at our differences? So I thought, what an extraordinary way to look at Lech Lecha. Not only do we leave to go to a promised land. The other thought is when Abraham was told by Hashem to leave and go to the promised land with Sarah, they didn't know where it was or what it would be, but they knew it would be a promised land and that God and goodness would be there. Well, today we know the Torah ultimately leads us with Moses and then Joshua into Israel. And nothing is perfect in Judaism. Israel and the promised land is still a work in progress. Perhaps that is the greatest beauty of Judaism. That Lech Lecha and becoming the best you can be, being created in the image of God, trying to be like God, compassionate, forgiving, kind, and yet standing firm against any evil or against any hurt to anyone else. So let me just conclude with something I made a note of and I would like very much to share with you. So there are many spiritual paths we can take today. Everyone is clamoring for their way. However, as we are told in our beautiful prayer, Aleinu, Judaism instructs us to approach God, Hashem, Torah, the right path with questions, with debate, sometimes even with, we trust, respectful argument. But in Aleinu, it says, know this day, take knowledge this day as the first step to getting knowledge, not only of ourselves, but of other people, of other faiths, and looking not only for the bad, but what is good. And then it says, know this day and consider it in your heart, your emotion, your feeling that the Lord is God. And as we know, God is one and humanity is one. The key to realizing your potential or to growing is going through this process. Perhaps that's where they got the idea that when you're young, before you face life, you spend a few years at a university, you get away from your parents, everyone you know, and you look at the different paths that are available to you. Well, as Jews today, we also know that we can actually put foot in what was said to be the promised land. And everyone, Jew, Christian, and Muslim, who travels to Israel has this incredible feeling of energy, of what's wrong, but also of what's good, and particularly now, of growing towards an understanding. So I'm going to conclude by saying, this becoming, a lot of people can say to you, oh, well, it's not for me, I'm not in the right place. God forbid they should say, it's too late. I don't have the time, or I'm too old. That word old does not exist in Judaism. When Moses passed on at 120 years, his eyes were perfect. His energy was perfect. He was like a young man. And the rabbis point out that the Hebrew word for life And Judaism stands for life, not an afterlife. Yes, it may be there, and I'm sure it is, but what we do right here will determine what happens there. So we're interested in life. And it says the word, when we always say to life, l'chaim, that's our toast, always appears in the plural form. Chaim, l'chaim, is to lives, plural. That is because life is a continuous process of self-discovery. It is never too late. Now is the perfect time. As far as Safas Emes, the 19th century mystic in Europe, says, God tells each one of us, Lech Lecha, go to yourself. Abraham, Sarah heard the call. I trust that you and I will also. Shabbat Shalom.